Hey everybody, Alex here with another tutorial. In this case, we're going to be talking about Adobe InDesign. Adobe InDesign. Now, a lot of my students ask me, why do I have to know Adobe InDesign? They're familiar with Photoshop, the raster program, primarily for working with raster graphics, graphics that are pixelated primarily that you capture from a camera or from the internet, pixel-based images primarily, although you can work vector in a little bit there. And they're also familiar with Illustrator, which is primarily the vector-based program for creating line art, vector art from scratch, like logos. But then they ask me, well, okay, why do I have to know InDesign? What's the point of InDesign? Well, InDesign is basically the layout program. And when I say layout, I mean situations where you might have multi-pages or continuing text boxes and so forth. Now, yes, there could be instances where you could make something in all three programs. For instance, a flyer. A flyer could be made in Adobe InDesign, Adobe Photoshop, or Adobe Illustrator. But you're going to find there's some instances, again, where you would primarily use Adobe InDesign, such as the ones I mentioned, like a magazine layout, where it's sort of continuing pages of content, or a newsletter. Some of the elements that you might find in a layout that has to do with a magazine might come from elements that you will use in Photoshop or in Illustrator. You might make logos that are made in a vector-based program. You might make, might do something like the cover of something, cutting out subjects, adding some lens flare, doing some image manipulation, and that might be done in Photoshop, and then you bring it in to a program like InDesign to do what we call the final layout. And certain elements such as continuing text boxes, multiple pages that spill into each other, these types of columns you see here. It's just much easier to do in InDesign than in a program such as Photoshop. In Photoshop, you'd have to keep moving content every week if you had a weekly newsletter and for text, and it wouldn't really make sense. So it really just depends on what you're doing. And again, sometimes there's some overlap, and sometimes it makes sense to use InDesign. So depending on the situation. But I think if it's a multi-page document, you'll find more often than not you'll want to use InDesign. And a lot of books and magazines and newsletters and menus for restaurants, you're going to see that they're designed in Adobe InDesign. So let's talk a little bit about Adobe InDesign and just kind of get into the basics. So what I'm going to do for this little tutorial is I'm just going to make a very simple multi-page design here for a situation where it might make sense to use InDesign. And in this case, I'm creating a storyboard, multi-page storyboard. So basically storyboards for movies, as you know, are kind of like the pencil illustrations of what you might expect to see in a scene, kind of the shots being laid out almost like a comic book. So what I want to do is to make multiple pages and multiple panels, little squares on each page. And I figured that InDesign would be good for that because it's a layout program. Yes, I could use Illustrator because in Illustrator, of course, you could create multiple art boxes, but there's a couple limitations with Illustrator that I think might cause problems later, which is why I want to use InDesign. And yeah, you could also use PowerPoint. There's many options, but just introducing you to InDesign for this particular purpose, I think it's really effective for something like Storyboard. So let's go ahead. I've opened up Adobe InDesign. We're in Adobe InDesign 2020 in this case. So this is the current newest version in 2020. As I'm making this tutorial during the in May of 2020 during the COVID 2020 situation, we're all kind of staying indoors. But it's a good time to make tutorials. So let's go ahead. We're going to go up and we're going to do File, New. Oops, sorry, I'm in Chrome. Make sure you don't do that. Click on. Sometimes that happens, by the way. If you see a different program at the top, that means you may have clicked on the other program by mistake. You can either click down here in your, at the bottom here, you can click on the program, okay, in your dock, or you can go to the top and just make sure it's the right program. If not, just click on the one that you see in the screen here, just to, in the foreground. So now I have InDesign. So I'm going to go up to File, New, Document. So File, New Document should bring up this panel you'll see here where you can kind of set the dimensions. So I'm going to be doing a multi-page situation here. Now, if you see this kind of bizarre character here, that stands for picas. And I don't really want to use picas. Picas were very popular in the era of Quark, although some people still swear by them, but it's a unit of measurement that not really for me. So I'm going to go ahead and probably like most of you, if you're in the United States, switch it to inches, okay? And then 8.5 by 11 is fine, but basically I want to do not portraiture, but I want to do landscape dimensions. So I'm going to switch to landscape. Now the number of pages, in my case, I'm just going to do 4 for now, okay? You could do more, I can always add more pages, but just for argument's sake. Now, do I want to do facing pages? Okay, this isn't going to be something that's going to fold like a menu or a brochure. Very popular situations for InDesign. So I'm going to uncheck that, okay? Start pages 1, that's fine, blah, blah, blah. Do I want any margins? Okay, we'll put a 1/2 inch margin. Again, this won't affect anything. It's just kind of there for your reference. If you want to put bleeds, sometimes for printing, you can put that little red line around the edge of bleed. Or a slug. Slugs are very popular if you're trying to, you know, if you're making a menu and you want to, or a brochure and you want to label your columns. It's just for you. It's a way to, it's kind of like an area outside of the content where you can kind of add some, you know, titles to the different columns and so forth you're going to be adding. So anyway, this is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and click, yeah, Untitled. I guess I'll give it a title. We'll say Storyboard Practice. I don't know. Storyboard Practice, sure. Create. So as you can see here, it opens me up to my first page. Oh, it's welcoming us. I think this is because I just updated, so it's giving me all these welcome screens. You may see that some of these pop-ups if it's the first time you've opened it since you updated. If I scroll down, here are all my other pages, by the way. There are my 4 pages. They're all there. But it's going to, you know, introduce you first to page 1. That'll be the one you see. Now, if you want to see the rest of them, you can go up to Window. This is where all your panels are. And you can go to the Pages panel. And as you can see here, I have nicely my 4 pages laid out here. Okay, I don't want to overcomplicate things with the whole master page situation. Now, master pages you can create as a kind of template for the rest of the pages to spawn them. And you can have sort of elements that cannot be edited, which will be on your the children that are spawned from the master page. But we're going to keep it really simple in this case and just kind of work with pages, not even deal with master pages. Okay, so I got my 4 pages here. So what I want to do on this first page is I just want to kind of create, you know, just sort of a 6-panel grid here. So just like your other programs, here are all your tools on the side. Now I just want to mention a couple things. You'll notice it's very similar to Adobe Illustrator. There is a select tool and there is a direct select tool, okay? There's also going to be a shape tool, okay, down here, or rectangle tool, I should say. Rectangle tool, ellipse, polygon, they're all kind of nested under here, different shapes. So I'm going to go to rectangle tool. I just want to make a rectangle for now and just kind of show you, just like in Illustrator, you can move the whole thing with the select tool, and with the direct select tool, you can actually click on points and you can, whoops, double click it here, and it should allow me to manipulate the points here. Whoops, it's not, there we go, yeah. So letting me kind of move it just like in Illustrator. So it has some of the similarities to that. You'll also see, just like in Illustrator, it has the fill and the stroke. Okay, fill, you can give it a certain fill color if you want, and also stroke is the outline, of course, which you can give, you know, a certain color to the outline. If you don't see your controls, go up to Window Control, and it should bring up all your controls. They're up here as well. As you can see, the green box and the red. And also the thickness of the stroke is here if I want to make it thicker. So a lot of the same drawing tools. There's not going to be as many drawing tools, though, as in Illustrator. So if you really need to draw a logo, unless it's something simple, I would create it in Illustrator and then bring it into this program. The great thing about Adobe programs is they're all friendly to each other. You could go ahead and just drag right directly into here your logo from Illustrator. Photoshop, if you bring a Photoshop element in, there's even a way to right-click on it and edit it live so that you can change it in Photoshop and it will change in InDesign. They're all friendly to each other. Same thing with the editing programs like Premiere and After Effects, of course. So I just wanted to point that out. So and then you'll see a lot of the same things like the type tools here, the line tool. There's, of course, the pen, the pencil. But there's not going to be quite as many drawing tools. And just like Photoshop, There'll be a couple of those tools, but there's not going to be as many tools for cutting and manipulating images. So if you really need to cut something out, although there is some masking capability in here, I would still do it in Photoshop and then bring it in. You can actually bring in a Photoshop that is a file that's masked, and it will honor the mask in the program. Okay, or you can bring it in as a PNG, of course, with transparency set. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's talk about what we're really trying to do here. Now, I could go to this rectangle tool and make a couple squares here, but what I want to do is go to this guy here, the rectangular frame tool. Why the rectangular frame? Well, let's go ahead and draw a rectangle to show you the difference. See how it makes this kind of X here? That means basically you can place content inside of it. It's a rectangular frame. It's a frame meant for content being dropped inside of it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and maybe give it a little stroke here just so it doesn't disappear on me. There we go, thin black stroke. Okay, so if I were to go up to File, okay, go up to our friend File here, very at the top here, and then go to Place, File, Place. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to, I believe it's in Creative Cloud here. Yeah, Alex Temp. So I went ahead and I found a couple of just kind of sketches on Google that could kind of serve as examples of something you might do by pencil, and then maybe you'd scan if you were actually doing your storyboard layout in InDesign. You would bring in your sketches, and this is basically, you know, imagining we drew these and I'm bringing them in. So imagine there's scans that I did. So anyway, let's say I want to bring this gentleman here and I want to go ahead and put him inside the frame there. So I go ahead to open, and then if I were to click inside, it should place it inside of the frame there. Now notice you don't see all of him. Why is that? Well, because the image I'm placing inside of the frame is larger than the frame. If I were to click on the side of the frame here, and you see it has this blue edge here, it's selected and it moves the whole frame. But what about if I were to click this circle here, what we call the content indicator? Notice what happens now. I can actually move the image in the frame. And if I were to zoom out, let's do a Command minus. It's just like the other programs, Command minus, Command plus. You see this orange border here? That orange border is the frame of the picture in the frame. So this is the true boundaries of this guy. I could go all the way down, see? And kind of move it around. You can always grab that content indicator if you lose track of it. Okay, I can move him all the way off. He's gone now. But if I go back here, I can go ahead and I can bring it back, okay, the content indicator. So obviously it's bigger than the frame. Now what if I wanted them to match each other, or at least come closer to each other? You just go to the corner here, see how it turns into that little, you know, the select tool turns into that little arrow, diagonal arrow. It's the same thing. Just hold shift, drag, and it should resize it just like it does in the other programs. Okay? And now I can make it a little closer to what we're seeing. Okay, there we go. Yeah, maybe, oop, I accidentally rotated a little bit too. Okay, so be careful of that. It's all right. It's a little rotated. And maybe I want to, because I don't want that black strip down there, maybe I want it to be just a little bigger than the frame. That's okay. Even if you lose a little bit of it, it may not be the exact dimensions of the frame, and I'm just trying to fit what's important in there, okay? So something like that. So you can see, in the end, I didn't even have the orange frame end up the same as the blue frame. There's the blue frame if I want it back. Okay, if I want to move this around, I always have to click the actual edge and get the blue frame. Click the content indicator if I want the orange frame. And now I can, again, move the content in the frame. So that's something really important to remember in Adobe InDesign, is it is based on this kind of the blue outer edge moving the frame, and the orange edge is the content in the frame. So that's how I'm basically going to be making my storyboards here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to delete that. That was just kind of an example. And I want to make 6 of these. Okay, so maybe I'll do 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom, something like that. You know, that could work. And notice what I'm doing here. I actually just made 3 of these. How did I do that? Well, I actually used the arrow keys on my keyboard. Okay, I'm going to delete it and do this again. What I basically did is I clicked and I dragged as if I was making one big rectangle, okay? But then, before letting go of the click, I'm still holding the click. I went down to the keyboard on my, my actual keyboard, okay, on my computer, and the right arrow key. 1 time, 2 times, and it breaks it into 3 frames there. So something like that looks pretty good. You know, maybe you want to put a little more distance between them. You could if you need to. But I'm kind of happy with that. So then I'm going to select these. They actually were already selected. And then if you remember, the Option key is a universal key for copying. I'm going to hold the Option key, click the edge of the frame, drag down, and I'm actually going to duplicate that row there. And then there's the nice little smart guides that tell me that I'm, I'm centering it. You see that little smart guide appearing in the middle there? So something like that looks pretty good. And I got my margins on the outside. By the way, there's no content really there. If I were to go to View and go to Screen Mode Preview, you wouldn't see anything there unless I select something, of course. Okay, there's nothing really. This is all, the margins aren't there. The frames aren't really there. They're just there for your reference right now. Okay, now what I want to do is start populating them with content. So we just did what we did before. So I'll select this first one, File, File, and I'll go down to, oh, here we go, Place. Now, I could do what I did before. Let's bring this guy in again, where I just click Open, and then, oh, actually, that time it got it. I was going to mention that there's a way to actually, without having to click on it, it will go right into the frame. So it did it that time. So basically, you can click on it to put it in there if it doesn't go in. So I'm just trying to, I hope I didn't actually distort him. Be careful of that. You know, you don't want to distort the dimensions of the person. I may have a little bit. If that's the case, anyways, I could redo it, but you get the idea there. So I put him there. So then I'm going to go to my next one, File, Place. Okay. That's what I was going to make. So if you have Replace Selected Item, that will usually allow the item, what you're placing, to go right into the selected frame without you having to click. So let's see if it does it this time. And it does. See? That time I didn't have to actually click like I did the first time. Now, if I didn't select it, I'd actually have to click in the middle of the frame, and it would place it like you saw before. So I'm going to put this group of people here. Again, the dimensions aren't exactly the same, right? So you might have to shrink down your orange frame and make it fit in the blue frame. So maybe this one's going to have a little more white space on the top and bottom because it's this group of people talking. Okay. Now let me click on this one. Now let's see what happens if I do File, Place. Sorry, I always miss it there. File, Place, and I uncheck Replace Selected Item with this third one. Whoop. No, this is the third one, the dog. This story doesn't make any sense. I just chose random images, I assure you. I don't know what the connection is. But anyway, if I click Open, notice it doesn't automatically put it in the frame. Why? I didn't select Replace Selected Item. But see how I have this cursor with the little ghost of the dog? If I click at least close enough to the middle of this frame, it should put it in there, and it does. And in this case, notice the image is actually smaller. It's smaller than the blue frame, so I have to drag it to make it bigger. Okay? And then I can make the dog fit. So there's the idea there. Now, something I did forget, you might want to put, a black stroke around the edges. I probably should have done that. Now I've made it a little tedious on myself. Yeah, black stroke, just because, otherwise you're going to have, especially with some of these where there's just white kind of outside of the drawing, it's hard to really tell where the edges are. And I still want to get the sense that these are squares. So, it's okay to put a black stroke around them. And in that case, if I were to go back to my, there we go, View Screen Mode, and I go to Preview, the X's go away, but you see the boxes stay, right? Because in this case, I gave them an actual physical stroke, okay? So let's go back to Screen Mode, Normal, and my storyboards are looking pretty good, okay? Maybe I'd want to add some text with the Type tool underneath. You can click the Type tool and you can actually click to drag a little box there. And, I could say like, whatever this is, like this would probably be like a medium close-up, of Dave. I don't know if his name's Dave, but let's make believe. That's the character. Medium close-up of Dave. And I could do a similar thing where I could, have, created the boxes by, with the arrow key. But I think in this case, I'm just going to kind of duplicate them. And I'm going to holding the Option key, and I'm going to hold Shift to actually keep it also in line. Okay. Might have to do a little bit of adjustment with the placement. Okay, but I'm doing this for a reason. So like, you know, you might want to have each one line up with the edge of the frame or something. And you can always put a character space if you don't want the text to begin right there. Um, anyways, I just want to do this because I might want to label each one. And then of course I can go in and I can change, you know, this one is not a medium. This one is like, you know, a wide shot, I guess. Wide shot group. And then close. I guess there's a group. Dave is running the meeting, but there's a close up of Dave's dog. Okay. You'll notice there's that little frame around the edges of the text. If we go back to view screen mode preview shows us what it really looks like. And with nothing selected, as you can see, it's not really there. So it's a nice way I can just label each one of my panels in my storyboard. Okay. So from this point on, I could proceed with adding content to the rest of these. Now let's just say I finish this page and I'm happy with it. Here's the beauty of it. I can go ahead, I can select the whole thing. Just do an edit, copy. And then go to my pages panel. Let's go to page 2. Let's do an edit, paste in place. Look at that. Perfectly centered. Now I could just go in and swap out the content. Now you're going to say, well, there's already something in there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I could select it and I could hit delete. I think you don't even have to hit delete though. I think you can just go file, place. This case, I'm just going to choose the dog again. Replace selected item. And yeah, see, it puts the dog where the other guy was. So you could delete them. You could click the content indicator, hit delete, and then play something. Or you could just select it and swap it out. And then, of course, you could swap out your text. So you get the idea. You kind of basically do your page 1, and then you just kind of paste it onto the other pages and just replace the content as needed. Paste in place. I'm doing paste in place, not regular paste, because paste would put it in some weird... Oh, well, actually, no, paste did put it in the center. Okay, sometimes paste kind of moves it a little bit off, not quite where it should be. So it's just important to make sure you're putting it, you know, where you want it. And I can already see, looking at the margins, I probably need to nudge everything a little bit to the right. I didn't exactly center it right, but you get the idea. Now, let's say I wanted to add more pages. I want to go to a 5th page. I'm like, oh shoot, you know, I'm doing my short film. I actually need more panels and pages for my storyboard. It's very simple. You just right click, and you can just do insert pages, and then I would do one page after page 4. Click OK. There it is. I can even do several pages, insert pages, and you could say not one page, but 4. I want 4 more pages after page 5. Bam. Okay. And you can see there was an option if I wanted to choose before, if I wanted to do something in the middle. But of course, I think you can also just drag these, right? Yeah, see, it switches the order. See, I just dragged it up. I could put one right here up to page 2, or page 3, I guess I put it, yeah. If I go like that, it'll be page... Okay, so now you can see there's page 1. Page 2 is now blank, because I dragged up a blank page. So that's the idea. So you do your whole storyboards and so forth and make it pretty and make it nice. And then when you're done, well, of course, we save. Make sure you save every now and then. I haven't even saved yet. Usually the first time you do a save as, although if you just do save, it will prompt this anyway. And I'm going to say storyboard practice, sure, as an InDesign document, save. But what about when I finally want to export it? Well, you know, if this is a storyboard, probably I'm going to do an Adobe PDF. So let's go ahead and do I believe I go to export, yeah, file, export, and it should be, a couple options here. Now I want Adobe PDF print, not interactive. Interactive would be if there's like clickable elements, like a web address or some animation. Just want it for print. I'll do, yeah, Adobe print. I understand that this isn't done, and there's blank pages and blank panels and so forth. This is just literally for practice here. So I'm going to go ahead and do Adobe PDF, and then I'm going to do save. There are a couple of options here. If you're not familiar with a lot of this, you know, leaving it to JPEG, downsampling is fine. Usually you don't want to add any marks or bleeds unless there's a specific reason. So I would leave a lot of this to default. And then you click, it's giving me a warning, but that's okay. So basically this should have now, if we go to... Yeah, it should have exported. Let's see here. Yeah, there's my PDF. And there it is, my multi. So there's no page 2. That's okay. There's page 3. There's page. Again, I was just kind of copy and pasting. Then I did a bunch of blank pages, you know. But you get the idea. That's it. That's how you can use Adobe InDesign for a multi-paged, multi-panel document. In this case, a storyboard. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. I think you can apply a lot of the lessons here to many different InDesign situations. And I look forward to seeing you for the next tutorial. Take care.